President Lee Jae-myung held a New Year's press conference on Wednesday, where he vowed to alleviate tensions between the two Koreas and achieve a peaceful coexistence. A Seoul Central District Court has sentenced former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to 23 years in prison for his role in an insurrection related to former President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law order. Marking the first year of his second term back in the Oval Office, U.S. President Donald Trump held a surprise press briefing to tout a list of his accomplishments across all areas, including the military, economic growth, and foreign policy. We begin with the South Korean president's first press conference of 2026. During the nearly 3-hour-long presser, President Lee Jae-myung stressed his administration's plans and efforts to soften tensions on the Korean peninsula. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min starts off.
Restoring the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Agreement will be among the key agenda items for the Lee Jae-myung administration this year to ease tensions between the two Koreas and pursue peaceful coexistence. This was stated by the president during his New Year's press conference on Wednesday from the Blue House.
이 날선 냉랭함이 한 번에 녹지는 않겠지만 북측의 호응을 이끌어내고 한반도의 긴장 완화를 이룰 실현 가능한 조치를 일관되게 지속적으로 추진해 가겠습니다.
He reiterated his role as a pacemaker to facilitate talks between Pyongyang and Washington.
그 속에서 미국의 역할이 매우 중요하다고 생각이 돼요. 미국 트럼프 대통령이 약간 독특한 분이시긴 한데 그 점이 한반도 문제 해결에는 크게 도움이 될 수 있다고 생각됩니다.
When it comes to North Korea's increasing nuclear capabilities, Lee called his 3-stage roadmap for denuclearization, which involves freezing, reducing, and dismantling the regime's nuclear program, realistic. On a possible U.S. tariff on semiconductors, President Lee said he was not too concerned, citing the allies' joint fact sheet, stating that Korea will be treated no less favorable than its competitors. The Trump administration recently said it plans to place 100% import taxes on foreign-made chips.
대만과 대한민국의 시장 점유율이 8, 90% 이렇게 될 텐데 100% 관세 올리면 아마 미국의 반도체 물가가 100% 오르는 결과가 오지 않을까 싶어요.
The press conference came after Lee's trips to China and Japan at the start of the year. As to relations with Beijing and Tokyo, the president promised to manage risks that could unfold as conflicts and pursue cooperation for the economy and the future. The president will be fully in charge of state and foreign affairs as he's set to enter his second year in office, focusing on yielding tangible outcomes through his pragmatic diplomacy amid complicated conditions. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And beyond the diplomacy, the South Korean leader made sure to take note of ongoing domestic affairs, from the heated housing market to the local stock market. Our Song Yujin has more.
President Lee Jae-myung's New Year's press conference was dominated by questions on the economy and domestic politics. The economy drew particular attention at a time when South Korea has persistently high house prices on the one hand and stock prices hitting fresh records on the other. To cool the housing market, President Lee hinted that his administration's third round of real estate measures is on the way, though he ruled out any plans to raise property holding taxes.
곧 국토부에서 공급 확대 방안을 현실적인 공급 확대 방안을 발표할 겁니다. 근데 우리는 이제 그런 추상적 수치보다는 아주 구체적이고 현실적인 수치를 제시하려고 하죠.
When asked about the benchmark Kospi's rally now nearing his campaign pledge of 5,000, Lee said South Korean stocks remain undervalued. He cited the removal of political and security risks along with greater transparency in the market as key factors needed to further lift the index. President Lee also highlighted culture as the new engine for South Korea's economic growth.
한국의 문화, 한국의 음식, 한국의 감성 또는 한국의 풍경, 이제 문화를 타고 이제 알려지면 그냥 한국 좋아, 한국 물건 좋아, 한국 스타일 좋아, 한국 음식 좋아 이렇게 되는 거예요.
Reaffirming the government's arm's-length principle of supporting the industry without interfering, Lee pledged additional financial support for the arts and cultural sector, calling this year's increased budget of 9.6 trillion won, roughly $6.5 billion, still insufficient. On domestic politics, President Lee made clear that his administration will push ahead with its plan to separate investigations and indictments into two agencies, one under the Interior Ministry and the other under the Justice Ministry, both set to be launched in October.
기소하기 위해서 수사를 하거나 수사를 합리화하기 위해서 기소해가지고 안 되는 거 알면서 가짜 증인 압박해가지고 유죄 만들고 이러면 안 되잖아요. 분리해야지 당연히.
However, Lee added that the government's proposal should not be seen as final, stressing the need to listen to political parties and the public to design a system that protects victims while preventing abuse of power. His comments follow divided opinions even within the ruling Democratic Party, including over whether prosecutors under the Justice Ministry's indictment body should have the authority to request supplementary investigations. Now, beyond these issues, President Lee also faces a long list of challenges, from local government integration and rising political polarization to a weakening currency. How he handles these tasks while pursuing unity and inclusive growth will be closely watched. 송유진, Arirang News.
Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has been sentenced to 23 years in prison, 8 years more than the 15-year term sought by the special prosecution for his role in former President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law declaration. Our An Sung-jin reports.
Seoul Central District Court sentenced former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to 23 years in prison on Wednesday for aiding an insurrection.
The defendant is sentenced to 23 years in prison. The case concerning the use of a falsely prepared official document is dismissed.
This marks the judiciary's first ruling that states that the December 3rd martial law declaration constituted the crime of insurrection under the Criminal Act. According to the ruling, Han's role as a prime minister vested him with democratic legitimacy and responsibility. Yet he abandoned his constitutional duty to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law and to keep in check the president's arbitrary use of power. The bench also criticized him for choosing to participate as a member of the insurrection and noted that his actions could have pushed South Korea back into a dark era where fundamental rights and democracy were jeopardized, potentially trapping the country in a prolonged authoritarian regime and irreversible trauma and loss for the public. Following the verdict, the court conducted a separate hearing to determine whether Han should be taken into custody and ordered his immediate detention, citing concerns over the destruction of evidence. The ruling came 4 months after Han Duck-soo's trial began in September last year. Prosecutors argued that Han, as the second highest official in state affairs, was aware of such unconstitutional plans, yet aligned himself with the declaration by giving it the procedural appearance of having been reviewed by a quorum of the cabinet. Han is also accused of signing a revised martial law proclamation to remedy legal defects in the original declaration and subsequently ordering its disposal. This marks the first time in South Korea's constitutional history that a former prime minister has been taken into custody from a courtroom. The ruling is expected to have significant implications not only for the ongoing trial of former President Yoon on insurrection charges, but also for cases involving other former cabinet members. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump during a press briefing at the White House on Tuesday local time to mark the first anniversary of his return to office touted what his administration has accomplished so far. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
President Donald Trump marked the first anniversary of his second inauguration on Tuesday local time at a White House press briefing. Trump touted a list of accomplishments, including military action, border enforcement, economic growth, and foreign policy, asserting that his administration has made more achievements in its first year than any other in modern history.
We have a lot of accomplishments, and as you know, this is the anniversary, first anniversary. But these are the accomplishments of what we've produced, all page after page after page, but we've done more than any other administration has done by far.
During the nearly 2-hour news conference, Trump shared his opinions on a range of subjects from his mass deportation efforts to U.S. military action in Venezuela and the role of the United Nations in combating world conflicts. He said he has especially focused on immigration and deporting alleged criminals, bringing a stack of papers he claimed contained names of undocumented migrants who had been convicted of crimes. The U.S. president held a mugshots of the alleged perpetrators before emphasizing the need for strong U.S. border control. On the economic front, Trump also reiterated that his One Big Beautiful Bill delivered the largest tax cuts in history and slashed the federal budget deficit by 27% in a single year. Trump asserted that his administration slashed the trade deficit by an incredible 77% and inked historic trade deals to reduce barriers on U.S. exports with countries covering 40% of all U.S. trade by using tariffs. The news conference came against a backdrop of international consternation over the administration's threats to seize Greenland. Trump has departed for the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where he will encounter European leaders. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Nobody did that before.
Amid South Korea's ongoing efforts to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula, unauthorized drone incursions into the north have posed difficulties in the administration's aim to resume dialogue with Pyongyang. To let our viewers better understand the background of what this incident is all about, our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung here is in the studio with us. So welcome back, Bo-kyung.
Thank you for having me, Tani.
So Bo-kyung, let's first talk about about President Lee Jae-myung's remarks on the incident. How seriously is the president taking this incident?
Well, very much, apparently. Referring to the alleged civil drone incursions into North Korea, President Lee Jae-myung raised concerns that this incursion could deepen Pyongyang's distrust, raising doubts that Lee administration's sincerity despite its calls for dialogue and peace. Take a listen.
그 와중에 어쨌든 이 무인기 사건이 터져서 이재명 정부도 믿을 수가 없겠다라는 또 하나의 징표 핑계거리를 만든 거죠, 우리 입장에서는. 그래서 이게 꽤 엄중한 사안입니다.
His remarks come a day after he ordered a thorough investigation into the drone launches during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday. He warned that any unauthorized infiltration of the north by civilians is virtually the same as initiating a war. And he also questioned Defense Minister Han Duck-soo, asking how drones could go back and forth several times without being detected, and ordered the government to upgrade facilities or equipment if needed, as this incident means there is a hole in the South surveillance network.
Now, I do understand why the government is taking this incident seriously, as it could lead to unnecessary confrontation between the two Koreas. Now, Bo-kyung, remind us what this incident is about and how is the investigation going?
Right, so to tell you the latest, the joint team of police and military investigators raided the houses and offices of the 3 civilian suspects suspected to be involved with drone incursions. The joint team was launched after North Korea claimed that South Korea's drone incursions took place in September last year and in January this year. Seoul's military denied such claims, and President Lee Jae-myung ordered the formation of a joint military police team to investigate them. Included in the civilian suspects are 2 people surnamed Chang and Oh. A report on January 16 said the task force questioned Chang, and after that, Oh came forward in a media interview saying he had launched the drones 3 times to measure radiation and heavy metal contamination near a uranium facility in Pyeongsan County. The 2, who reportedly went to the same private university in Seoul, jointly founded a drone manufacturing startup and served as contract news monitoring staff at the presidential office under the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Oh said his acquaintance Chang did not know that the drone would be sent to the regime. Now, the joint team is looking into fresh allegations that the Defense Intelligence Command financially backed Oh, providing money to 2 online outlet companies he set up. And so it is expected that the task force will seek to verify whether the DIC was also involved in the drone incursion as well.
Pogyong, North Korea made the claim of these drone incursions and asked for an apology from the South. How would the regime see this?
Right. So I talked to two North Korean experts, and they both agreed that the regime will recognize President Lee Jae-myung's efforts to, manage the situation and also prevent this kind of incident from happening again.
They will acknowledge that the Lee Jae-myung government is making efforts at the presidential level to ease military tensions, prevent accidental clashes, and stop a recurrence of drone incidents.
Our government did its utmost to do what the regime asked it to do by actively investigating and conferring it was a civilian drone infiltration. Even the president defined it as a provocation and ordered a thorough investigation and punishment.
Yet, the experts added that the North is not going to right away see such efforts as sufficient and will ask for more as it needs to use this incident to boost internal unity and strengthen the rhetoric of two hostile states.
Even so, given the current situation, the regime needs to maintain the most hostile stance, so it is likely to respond by saying the efforts are insufficient, or that it will wait and see.
Let's see how the Lee administration manages to ease the tensions on the peninsula. Pogyong, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
A new package of financial support aimed at strengthening exports and overseas projects has been announced, with the aim of supporting joint overseas expansion by large and small businesses. Our Kim Jun-hong reports.
South Korea's Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul has announced plans to bolster export financing with a new policy-backed funding vehicle. Speaking at a meeting of economy-related ministers on Wednesday, the minister said the government plans to scale up its export financing capabilities.
We will increase financial support to spur new market development, extending coverage to long-term and lower credit projects beyond major defense, nuclear and industrial construction deals.
In particular, he announced plans to introduce a so-called Strategic Export Finance Fund designed to channel corporate gains back into strengthening the broader industrial ecosystem, adding that related legislation would be pushed through quickly. On shared growth between large and small firms, he said that the government will shift away from a big business-led model of economic diplomacy.
A shared growth strategy has been put in place to ensure large firms and small businesses advance together as equal partners, with export financing incentives offered for their joint overseas ventures.
Under existing rules, joint overseas expansion projects by large and small firms qualify for up to 1 billion won in funding over 3 years, which is roughly $680,000. The government plans to double that amount and also scale up support for investment projects in the United States. The minister underscored a renewed push this year to drive economic growth while addressing polarization through targeted policies. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
South Korea's antitrust regulator has imposed its first-ever sanctions for collusion involving loan-to-value ratios, fining the country's 4 major commercial banks a combined $183.7 million. Our Cho Young-eun has this report.
The Korea Fair Trade Commission said Wednesday that it fined the country's 4 largest commercial banks, KB Kookmin, Shinhan, Hana, and Uri, a combined 272 billion won, or $183.7 million for colluding on real estate lending limits tied to loan-to-value ratios. Together, the 4 banks account for roughly 60% of South Korea's mortgage market. And the commission said their coordinated limits on LTV ratios significantly curtails consumers' ability to choose among lenders. The commission concluded that the banks' coordinated real estate lending restrictions between 2022 and 2024 violated the Monopoly Regulation and Fair Trade Act.
The bank's combined related interest revenue was around 6.8 trillion won. The fine ranks among the largest ever imposed by the commission.
According to the KFTC, the 4 banks exchanged printed documents through Excel files containing LTV information in nearly 7,500 recorded cases. Data show that in 2023, the average LTV ratio offered by the four banks was 7.5 percentage points lower than that of non-colluding banks, and the gap widened to 8.8 percentage points for non-residential properties closely tied to corporate lending. The impact was particularly severe for small and mid-sized enterprises, which often have lower credit ratings and face greater difficulty receiving unsecured loans or additional collateral.
We believe that the biggest problem is that small and medium-sized enterprises and small business owners are facing difficulties because they are unable to secure the funding they need in light of the current economic conditions.
The case marks the first enforcement under a revised fair trade law that took effect in December 2021, which introduced a new provision banning collusion through the exchange of sensitive business information. 조영은, Arirang News.
Authorities have granted conditional approval for BTS to film at major historic sites here in Seoul ahead of the group's comeback in March. And the approval from the Korea Heritage Service covers Gyeongbokgung Palace and Sungnaemun Gate for use in a planned Gwanghwamun show. Seoul City is in the process of reviewing a request by the group's agency HYBE for a show at Gwanghwamun Square as well as a separate event at Seoul Plaza. Now, BTS is set to release its fifth full-length album titled Arirang on March 20th.
It's getting even colder as the day goes on. With the cold wave warnings expanding and strengthening across the country, tomorrow morning temperatures will drop sharply to minus 14 degrees in Seoul, making it the coldest day of this winter so far. In addition, starting today, heavy snow is expected in Chungcheongnam-do Province, the Jeollado Provinces, Jeju Island, Ulleungdo, and Dokdo. Areas under heavy snow advisories, including the southern west coast of Jeollabuk-do Province, the northwestern parts of Jeollanam-do Province, and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, could have 1 to 5 centimeters of snow per hour, so please be careful. Chuncheon will start cold at minus 17 degrees tomorrow morning, with Daejeon and Gyeongju at minus 12 degrees. Daily highs will rise to minus 5 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, minus 2 degrees in Daejeon and Gyeongju. Unfortunately, this cold snap isn't going anywhere just yet. We'll need to bundle up and hang in there for a few more days. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.